Okay. Right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name's James Astley, and I head up the solutions arm of Somerford Associates. With me today, I have Nathan, the Director of UK Sales at Mnemonic, and I also have Tommy, who's with me today as well, who is the Head of Solution Architecture at Mnemonic. Today, I'm really pleased and I'm very excited to announce that Somerford and Mnemonic have decided to partner together. This partnership's been something that's been bubbling away for a couple of years now, and I think both our organisations knew that when the time was right, that we would end up working together. So I'm really excited and very pleased to have that come to fruition today. So just a little bit about why do we actually move forward and why do we partner together? What were we looking for within this partnership? So from our side, Mnemonic have a very strong reputation across network and cybersecurity as a whole, and are highly respected within industry, providing brilliant technical capabilities, spanning very complex and specialist industry requirements. Both our organizations are very aligned in our company methodology and our culture, and we both put our customer requirements at the center of every engagement to make sure that we align and find the appropriate solution that works for our customers and ultimately delivers value. Mnemonic, from a sort of industry spat at this point, are trusted across multiple markets, and like Somerford, have a diverse range of clients, leading from central government and intelligence services to manufacturing, telecommunications, financial services, online retail, and many, many more. So there was a real cohesion and alignment in terms of the industries and the types of organizations that we both work with today. And finally, I think it's really important to understand the quality services that Mnemonic provide, and their flexibility to build a bespoke service that is also aligned to the Somerford solution portfolio. So not only the ability to, again, align to customers' requirements, but actually there's a lot of overlap in terms of what we already have today in-house, and the capability that Mnemonic certainly bring to layer on top of that and take it much beyond what we have available today. So I know Tommy's going to go through some more of these points in a bit more detail, and he's going to go a bit more into who Mnemonic are and the capabilities they provide, and ultimately how they can help and work together. So without further ado, I'll pass across, and look forward to seeing how the partnership progresses.
Thank you, James. I certainly look forward to that as well, and thanks for that introduction. I'm very excited about this relationship as well. I think we're, as you mentioned, I think one of the very, very key aspects is our culture, and I think we align very well in that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk a little bit about Mnemonic and who we are and what we are as a company. Then I'm going to spend most of the time talking about managed detection and response, what we think that is and what's important about that, and some of the trends we see both in the market and in the threat landscape. And I'm going to use that to point to a couple of challenges that are ongoing and that we think will kind of shape the future a little bit. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time at the end talking a little bit about our services and what we can provide in that area. So hopefully that'll be a good session. There is the option of asking questions in the chat here. So if anyone have questions, just type them in there. I'll try to keep an eye on it, but we'll probably wait with most of the answers until the end as we get through to that. So starting off, Mnemonic has been around for a while. We started up back in 2000, and we started as a security company. We're still a security company, so that's our main focus, and it's been like that over the years. But obviously, security has changed a lot over those 20 years. But it all started with a need for someone that focused on security. Our founders, they came from the IT industry, had been working there as system integrators and the like for a while. And they saw the need for someone that really knew what security is about. And it started out with system integrations with managing security devices. So it was a lot about firewalls in the beginning, and then it kind of slowly turned into more detection mechanisms and other technologies over time. So we built a company on that system integrations capability, and then slowly we moved into the area of detection and response or managed security services all the time. So it's been quite a journey going there. We started actually with the managed detection response services, as we call it now, all the way back in 2002. And I'm going to get back to the history of that a little bit, but our goal has always been to help our customers be more secure, basically. So we work with everything from the large SMBs and all the way up to the larger enterprises. And we've always been employee owned, which I think is key, and it's also very important for the culture that James also mentioned. I think everyone that works in Mnemonic has an ownership to what we do and who we are, and that's a very important part of our culture. And it's also always been the focus on those people, to make sure that the people are happy, make sure that we have a great work environment where people can share ideas, and everyone's treated alike. We don't have like a strong hierarchy or anything like that. We do have some sort of structure of the companies in terms of personnel management, stuff like that, but ideas are ideas no matter where they come from, and that kind of entrepreneurial spirit is very important in terms of developing such a complex service over time. And one of the kind of the greatest things that we've been developing, as we started back in 2002 with our managed security services, and at the very beginning, we actually started developing our own platform. At that point, we didn't really know whether that was going to be our solution or not, but it started very small, and we started developing what we now call Argus. We did evaluate other solutions as well. We did look at some of the commercial SIMs at the time, and those of you who were in the business at that time, you recognize that market was very different back in 2002 and through the early 2000s from what it is today. The maturity of those solutions were not good, and it was tricky. Just to get them to work was kind of a challenge. So in 2006, we made the final decision that we're not going to evaluate other tools anymore. We're going to go all in on our own platform, and we've done so since. And that's been one of the things that have been recognized by Gartner and others, that platform is something that really sets us aside. So it's been very successful so far. Argus, so we've been developing the services in Norway since then, since the early 2000s, and we've grown in Norway. We have a significant market share here, and a few years back, we decided that we wanted to go global, so to speak. So we had one department in Sweden since the early days, since 2003. So that's been going on. They kind of carried on the inheritance of our system integration. So they have a lot of system experts and security experts there. But we wanted to go global with our Argus Managed Defense platform and service. So we've grown over time into UK, obviously, but all the Nordics, so Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, and we also establish offices now in the Netherlands and in the US. So we're really growing, and we have quite an international and global footprint now, and we continue to grow. Yeah, I think that's the most important part of our company. So just briefly mention that we still do, obviously, what we've always been doing, the system integrations, this security architecture. We do security operations where we manage and maintain security devices. We also added governance, risk and compliance, and technical risk services with pen testing, code reviews, and those sort of capabilities. So we really want to deliver a very broad approach to security. And I think also our consultants fit very well also with the deliveries of Somerford. So we so far our partnerships have been very good in that, and we work in the same way with our customers. We want to be partners. We want to be there long term, and we want to develop together with our customers. So very promising so far. Changing pace a little bit, I want to go into detection and response. Some of you may have seen this before. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I think it's really important to understand what actually constitutes detection and response. And for those of you working with security, you obviously know that there's more to security than detection and response, but it is a key component. There has to be something in place before detection, and there's also some steps that comes after this. But breaking it down, I like to think of detection and response as two very distinct phases. So there is differences between them, but they interconnect and they're dependent on each other. But detection is about gathering data and sorting through it to find that little piece of information that tells you that something's going on. So it starts by collecting data or alerts from wherever you can get it inside your infrastructure. And this is important because getting data, it's actually increasingly hard. And I'll get back to some of the challenges a little bit later, but getting the right data, getting all the data, and getting a complete picture is kind of a challenge, and it needs to be automated. You need to be able to collect to the data sources that's available and automate that. And the volume and the velocity of that data is significant, and it's very, very hard to kind of sort through that, or I would like to say impossible to sort through that manually. No one really want to do that. And that's where the technology comes in to help us. And so we need to have some sort of technology-driven sorting and triage to figure out what's necessary to even look at. There's a lot of technology out there, and the technology solves that in different ways. Obviously, we do that through the Argus platform. And I'll get back to how those different technologies connect to that platform as well. But the end of the last phase of the detection is to actually look at the results of that sorting. Whenever all the noise is filtered out to the best ability of the technology, we still need someone in the loop to actually have a look at it and do that last final verification. And that verification ends up in the decision that this is a security incident. And I say decision because it's always a decision that you make. And when you make a decision like that, it should trigger something else as well. So that's where the interface between detection and response lies. So if you decide that this is an incident, it should trigger a response action. That action could be several different things, obviously. You could verify this is an actual incident, but my response is I don't care, because it doesn't have the impact that's necessary to trigger a more involved response than that. So that's kind of the dynamic. So when it comes to a verified incident, you've removed all the noise. All you have left is kind of that indicator or that set of indicators that says that this is something that I need to do something about. And that's when you put on the response hat and go into the response phase. And here it's all about gathering data. So you've sorted, you filter away a lot of data through the detection, but going into the response is about collecting more data, and that collection is more targeted. So you're not looking for all the noise, you're looking for specific information related to the indicators you already have. And I want to emphasize that because this phase is extremely important. We see many organizations go from a verified incident to executing responses. So they say, well, we have a compromised laptop that we need to deal with that. So we take that laptop offline and we reinstall it. Problem solved. The problem with that is that you don't know what else happened. You triggered your response based on the first indicator you had, and that could lead to some serious problems because what you're doing is that you're actually removing evidence of what the threat actor was doing. So if you want to look at it as pulling on a thread to see what's in the other hand, is you're just cutting that thread and making it impossible to kind of know what really happened. So the first phase of response should always be a further analysis, scoping the incident and looking at the impact it has, because the response you have needs to be also aligned with the impact it has on the organization. So let's, for example, say you have an incident related to a web service of yours. So it seems like there might be a web server that's compromised based on the data you have from the detection phase. If that web service is critical for you, let's say you're a web shop and it's Black Friday. If your first instinct is to shut that server down, that would probably not sit well with the business. So making sure that you know the impact both of the incident but also on the potential responses that you have, it's very, very important in the phase. And when you know that, when you're fairly certain that you know the extent of the incident and you know the impact it has on the business, then you should make a plan and prioritize your actions accordingly. And this planning phase is also very often skipped, but also really important, because part of making a plan is also to define the expected outcomes of the different actions. And without knowing the expected outcomes, it's very, very hard to test for success. And it might become necessary during incident handling to take a step back and look at the results of the actions you've taken and maybe adjust the plan and move forward in different directions, because these things are, or at least maybe very, very dynamic. And without an expected outcome, that is really, really hard. So this entire process is very, very important. And when I describe it now, it sounds like it's very tedious and you need to spend like weeks making a plan on how to respond. That's not necessarily the case. And all of this, the entire response phase could happen in minutes, in some cases maybe even seconds. But it's very important that you actually go through the steps. And this is not something that is specific to a service provider such as us or someone delivering managed detection and response services. This is true for every organization. Even though you do all of this internally, the process is basically the same. But what we try to do is that we try to obviously do all of the heavy lifting on the detection side. So we want to help go through all the collection of data from different parts of the infrastructure, do the automated sorting and triage. And this is where the size of our organization and our experience and the way we can work on scale is very, very valuable. And we have people trained to actually do this verification, because that's something that you can't spend a lot of time on, making those decisions whether to do a response or not do a response. That is something that needs to happen very quickly, and it's very kind of a specialized field doing that. So I think that's partially where you could get value from outsourcing that part of it. When it comes to the response phase, it's often a collaborative effort. It depends on the internal capabilities of your organization, what you want to do, what you want to prioritize. what kind of effect a potential incident could have on the business. So this is kind of a moving target, who does what. But at least the way we deliver services, our goal is always to provide as much context and as much advice as possible during this phase. So it should always be easy for our customers to go through from an incident to executing a response. We want to shorten this time as much as possible. And as some of you probably see on the bottom here, we from the left to the right, we move from a technology-driven to a human-driven, technology-assisted kind of process. That being said, on the very right-hand side here, we do have technology now that could automate some of this response phase. And we have a lot of that built into our platform, and there are tools and solutions out there that helps in gathering information in the scoping and impact phases, in executing specific responses to some very kind of specific instances. So those could be both automatically and semi-automatic. So you could actually trigger responses based on your analysis. And all those tools is obviously very valuable. But I would still claim that this right-hand side of this process is still human-driven, even though the technology gets better and better at helping us. And in order to do this properly, it requires an organization. This is not something, I'm not going to go through all of these kind of the different setups here, but what I want to emphasize with this is that going through the detection and the response phase, it requires different skill sets, and it requires an organization that could actually do that. And probably a lot of you already know that, but getting all these people together in an organization it's actually quite hard, because if you're the guy looking at the alerts coming in, you have somewhere between a minute and two to look at an alert before it's outdated and the next one comes in. That is quite challenging, and it's a high stress environment, and that's something that most people won't do for years and years. So you need to be able to rotate, and you have to find the right people, give them the right skills quickly, and rotate them into this kind of arrangement. But you will also always need someone with different experience, with the ability to do more deep analysis, the ability to follow up on incidents that might go on for weeks. So we need that skill set as well. And building this kind of an organization and keeping the right people on payroll might be challenging. And we know, everyone that's tried to recruit security people knows how hard that is. And it's kind of a competition between everyone, and because everyone needs this, and just building this is very, very hard. And if you want to have that kind of an organization, what you need is also you need the tools, you need the processes for this to work properly. And I think that is at least some things that you should think really, really hard about before you start building internally, at least all of these capabilities. I would say that some of it should be internal, some of it should probably be outsourced, because that is a lot easier, unless you're a very, very big organization and have a huge security budget. We could spend an hour talking about this as well. We've done some earlier webinars on that. So anyone that's interested could just ping me or Nate or anyone in Somerford, and we could set that up if you want to talk about building your own SOC and what are the benefits or the challenges with outsourcing parts of that. We can talk a lot about that. So that's a little bit about our services. I'll get back to the kind of the portfolio of services as well. But I want to take a step back and have a little bit of look on how this is changing and what's important going forward. So this is probably not very surprising to anyone attending. But we do see a change in the threat landscape. And I talked to another customer about this yesterday as well. And I kind of debate myself here because yes, the threat landscape is changing, but the threat actors and their goals haven't really changed that much. I think the main change in the threat landscape is based on how we as organizations are using our digital tools and the way our infrastructures are changing. I think that's what constitutes the change in the threat landscape as well, because we're giving the threat actors new possibilities as we're opening up new attack surfaces. So the first very obvious trend is the increasing use of cloud services, and we see more and more hybrid deployments, and that's been going on for a while. What we also see is the increasing use of multi-cloud. To begin with, we saw most customers that were kind of starting moving to cloud, they chose one provider and they stuck with that. What we tend to forget about that is that a lot of these companies were already using what we used to call web services or web-based services, which is actually, if you look at the definition, also cloud services now. So they're just SaaS services. So all those web pages where you have a login and you do something that is important for your business, all of that is also cloud services. So everything from your PaaS in AWS, your Azure AD, and maybe your virtual machines in Azure infrastructure, all of that together, it is a multi-cloud environment. And that is something that is really, really changing both the attack surfaces of your organization, but also really affects the challenges related to detection and response, because everything gets a lot more distributed. And I'll get back to some of those challenges in a bit. We also see partnerships are changing. For many organizations, there are a lot more focus on strong partnerships. Some of them are strategic, but we also see an increasing amount of smaller pieces of the business are based on partnerships. So there's an increasing number of partners, sourcing and outsourcing partners, and the entirety of that picture is changing rapidly. And if you look at pretty much any organization now, and you look at how their infrastructure connects to a multitude of partners, that picture is getting increasingly complex. And the last thing, I guess the market has been talking about IoT for a few years now, but we really start to see the effect of that. Everything needs to be online, and there is not always a conscious decision whether something needs to be online or not. It's just designed to go online, and we'll let it. So I think that's also one of the things that will be very, very relevant going forward. And I'll step on, and we can talk about some of that, because all of this picture that I've painted now, it's leading to a couple of things. And first of all, the traditional perimeter is changing. Some will even claim that perimeter is dead, and we hear things like identity is the new perimeter. I do agree with that, but for most organizations, that's at least all organizations that's been around for a while, there will be some legacy, and I don't think their need for traditional perimeter technologies will disappear, at least not for quite a while, but it is changing, and we need to consider that in the scope of our entire infrastructure. So I wouldn't throw out the firewalls protecting your data centers yet, but I would certainly look into how to get the same kind of protection for all your SaaS services that's not necessarily behind that firewall. So we need to think differently, and we need to think differently about perimeter, but not necessarily throw out everything that we've always done either. But we might need to change the setup a little bit, change the technology, and change our approach to that. And I guess this one's quite obvious, but detection and tracking gets more complicated. Our environments are spread out, and we tend to think about our Azure cloud, our data centers, and our AWS Docker containers. We think about them in kind of silos. But in order to properly detect and handle threats, I think we need to think of this as one infrastructure and to be able to see the entire picture. And that is actually more complicated than it sounds. It may implicate having the same policies across them, maybe be able to collect data, so logs and other event data from across the environments. So there's a lot of challenges in handling this situation. And I think a lot of that challenge is actually connected to the last bullet point here, which is configuration and asset management. An asset is a lot of different things now. You could maybe call it identity and asset management, but if you look at users as assets as well, then you have users and identities, you have your traditional network devices, computers, laptops, servers, all that, but you also have things like apps, containers, Lambda functions in AWS. So all of those are kind of assets in that aspect, which makes that picture a lot more complicated. And also configuration. Configuration errors are very, very common, and they're one of the most common reasons for compromises these days. And even though you start out with the same configuration, you do have what we call configuration drift. So over time, even though in isolated pieces, all the changes you make sense and they're tested and they're sane, but there might be things that happens over time that you don't really consider when checking for errors, and those things will be very important to keep track of. So technology. I guess this could be another discussion in itself, but obviously cloud security is important. There are a lot of solutions out there today, and they've been around for a while, but there's new technology showing up pretty much constantly. And there are some trends going towards consolidation. So the big cloud vendors obviously want to offer most of this themselves. So Microsoft has quite an extensive security portfolio, but also third-party vendors such as Palo Alto, Checkpoint, and others are trying to create product portfolios that will cover like the entire aspect of cloud security, which is quite broad. And then you have things like listed there, and for those that don't really take the abbreviations, I'll help you with that. But these are Gartner terms, and they represent kind of technology areas. You might see them under different names as well. But the first one is Cloud Access Security Broker, CASB. That is solutions that helps maintain identities across cloud solutions and enforcing policy. Some of them will help you do things like user behavior analytics and stuff like that as well. The solutions are very, very different, and they focus on different areas of the category. So you will see very, very much different things there. Same with cloud security posture management. This is more about ensuring that you have a comprehensive policy across your cloud environments, across SaaS, PaaS, IaaS deployments. This is also where you get what we call drift detection that I touched on earlier, where your configurations are changing over time into something that might be vulnerable. These are the kind of tools that will help detect such drift. So might be very valuable. And then there's the workload protection, cloud workload protection, which is more about runtime detection, looking into stuff like containers and looking for threats in your runtime environment. That's kind of the very, very short description about that. But I think that these kind of technologies, they might change names and they might consolidate, they might go in different directions. But I think a lot of these kind of tools will be key going forward with cloud security. And we're going to need solutions that cover or go across our multi-cloud environments and can help us get a consolidated picture of our entire security posture, because that's one of the key challenges that we need to solve going forward. Then I'm not going to spend a lot of time on anomaly detection because that is also a huge area in itself. But from what I see, I think that anomaly-based detection is still in its infancy. Some people will probably disagree and say that I have a very mature solution and it works as prescribed, and it might be that's the case, but I think that this is an area that's going to develop a lot in the coming years. We do see solutions using machine learning and AI to whatever extent. I think that AI discussion is interesting in itself, but anyway, we will see more detection based on anomalies, and I think that network traffic anomalies, so based on flow logs from the cloud solutions or based on actual network traffic, I think those will be important, but also solutions looking at users and entities and assets and looking for anomalies in the way they communicate and behave. And the challenge for us as security people and especially analysts is that these kind of tools, they alert in a very different way from what we're used to. So an anomaly doesn't necessarily mean that it's related to security at all. So analyzing an anomaly is very different. And I think there's no kind of one size fits all. And I think that the other things that we've been doing for a while will be just as important as these anomaly-based solutions going forward, because it is the correlation between those that's going to be important. If you want to validate an anomaly, you need log data. You might even want to look at your old IDS data to see if there's any correlation there. So I think bringing these solutions together and looking at it holistically is very important. I brought privileged access management or identity access management. I'll put that on here. These are not new technologies, but I think they're changing roles. As mentioned earlier, we sometimes state that identity is the new perimeter, and that means that the identities have taken on a very new role in our security posture. And managing and handling identities, and especially handling privileged access, is going to be key going forward. So I think we will see the technology mature even more, but we're also going to see those technologies take a different role in security going forward. So it's going to be more relevant for your overall both detection and response, but also obviously for the preventative part of security. And then there's a very new category that's called security validation. This is where you could actually deploy a solution that will verify whether your security measures are successful or not. So let's say you deploy a very simple example, but if you have an IDS that are looking at your internal network, looking for lateral movement, security validation will deploy both an attacker and a victim as virtual components in your infrastructure, and it will replay attacks that we've seen. So they will look at known threat actors, known known attack methodologies, and they will simulate those attacks within your infrastructure. And since they're both attacker and victim, it will easily know whether it's successful or not. And you could then easily verify whether your idea is actually alerted on that or not. And if it alerted, did someone do something about it? So it's a way to verify both the technology and the processes related to detection and response. So I think that's something that will be important and is going to be make it a lot easier to verify that all those bits and pieces that we need to put into to get it right, that works as intended. And it's also going to be a very good tool to actually verify that our investments are put into the right place and that we actually have some return on those investments. So very, very quickly on response, because I think this is very important part as well. I said that so having a holistic view of it, entire infrastructure is important. And when we respond, we want our responders to be in a situation like these firemen here, where they could actually start right ahead with water in their hoses, going at the fire, attacking it, and killing it as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, the situation is a lot more often like this. They just have to sit around and wait for the right tools to come along. They don't necessarily have the water available to stop the fire. And that's the situation in cybersecurity as well, where a lot of time, and we do a lot of incident response, and what we see very, very often, way too often, is that the data we need to investigate is not there. So forget about kind of response actions. We don't even know what's happening because we don't have any data, and that's a situation that we need to avoid. So making sure that we collect data and that we collect all the data that might be relevant after the fact, and not only data that's necessary for detection. And just to give you a very quick overview, we can send you this later for every attendees, so you don't have to kind of write all of this down, and I'm not going to go into the details, but during a response, there are several phases, and there's a lot of different decisions that needs to be made, and there's a lot of different evaluations across both administrative and technical matters. And the goal of being prepared for response is to make sure that when you get into this response cycle, that you have everything ready to answer all the questions. So this is not just a matter of having some data in a log solution. It's a lot more involved than that. And make sure that you keep that in mind when you choose how you set up your infrastructure and how you collect the data, and also how you create your process and how you train for response. So last thing I want to say about kind of current threat picture and trends and where we want to go forward is I want to emphasize flexibility because things are changing fast, and going forward, you need to make sure that your organization is set up to handle changes in the threat landscape, rapid changes in technology. That is both the way you do business, the way your business is utilizing digital tools and new developments, but also being able to take in new detection and response technologies. So we don't really know what this world is going to look like in 2 years. There might be technology that we haven't even dreamed of yet that will change this forever. And we need to be able to adopt that and use it successfully. And we can't do kind of five years cycles when it comes to adopting new ways of working and new technologies. And I think also infrastructure flexibility, both flexibility in terms to be able to handle changes, but also being able to handle new sourcing relationships dynamically. We need to be able to adapt to new workflows, new processes, and new integrations, because those are going to happen all the time. In order for pretty much in any business, there will be disruption, and companies that want to kind of be part of that business for a while, or that market, they need to change accordingly. And when disruption happens and you need to change fast, then the technology, and especially the security technology, need to keep up. And we need to build that flexibility into the choices we make today. So that's it for that part of the presentation. I just now want to quickly step through what Argus Managed Defense is and how we think about this. These are kind of the 8 areas that we focus on, which pretty much cover anything that would be relevant for detection and response. And there's a bunch of technology behind it. We have a relationship with third-party vendors for a bunch of different technologies. You'll recognize many of them, such as Checkpoint, Palo Alto, FireEye, Splunk, Microsoft. There's a bunch of technology behind this, and we also do develop quite a bit of this technology ourselves. But I want to highlight some key areas here. So log analysis, and collecting and analyzing logs is going to be key going forward. A lot of the things that we can do is only available through logs. So different log solutions, you don't really have access to the infrastructure, so you need to base decisions on whatever data you can get, and that is log analysis. So and having the flexibility and being able to actually get the data from all your services and everything that you use, it's going to be key. I also want to talk about endpoint security. So having an infrastructure where the traditional perimeter is changing and you don't really have control over all your assets at any time, then being able to look at the endpoints, both laptops, clients, and servers, that is where you can detect a lot of the more advanced attacks, and it's really, really valuable to being able to do that. Network analysis is changing a little bit, but we still have network infrastructure, so I think that's going to be important for a while going forward. And I would say the area of vulnerability monitoring, this is something that we've been doing for a while, and it's vulnerability scanners regularly scanning your environment for vulnerabilities. What's changing there now is that we focus more on cloud as well. So we're looking into cloud configurations, cloud compliance, and stuff like that, which is all part of kind of the vulnerability monitoring part of security. So I think that's also important going forward. And you can see there's cloud security up here, which is important, which is a huge area. And cloud security is pretty much a combination of everything else on here. So it's log monitoring, it's endpoint security, it's vulnerability monitoring, and it's a bunch of other stuff as well. It also includes the solutions I talked briefly about earlier. And the way we built this, so you can see it says Argus in the middle, and Argus, as I mentioned in the introduction, is our platform, and it's also our service portfolio. So the way we built this is that the platform can take in data from pretty much any technology, and both internally developed and any third-party technology, and also things that you might have in your organization that we haven't worked with earlier. We could take that in Argus, and we use that as our analysis platform. And I think this is key because it relates to some of the challenges that I mentioned. It definitely covers the flexibility aspect, because we can take a new technology and adopt that very, very quickly. And we can change the services more or less overnight without having to change our analyst processes and their interfaces and all the tools surrounding that, which is extremely powerful. And I think that is something that everyone should look for if they want to build something internally and do all of this themselves, or if they're looking for services from a third party. Look for that kind of flexibility, because that is going to be very, very important going forward. And just getting close to the end here, and we'll have a few minutes for questions as well at the end. The basis of this service, where we could build it with all the modules that I just mentioned, we There's obviously 24/7 security monitoring, and that is analysts actually sitting in our SOC looking at events as they come in, and they validate, verify, and they alert customers 24/7. And they also have escalations path internally if they need help, all the way up to our incident response team if necessary. It includes the customer portal, and it also includes global threat intelligence, which I'll get back to in a second. We always have a dedicated technical account manager, and this is also where I think our alignment with Somerford is a perfect match, because Somerford also had this relationship with their customers. They're building that role as an advisor over time, and they want to really work with their customers. We could fit into that seamlessly. We'll have our dedicated technical account manager that will work together with Somerford and their representatives to make sure that both this service and everything else that we do with our customers are aligned with the customer strategy and also their more immediate needs. So this is very important. And obviously we do quarterly service meetings as a tool for the TAM, but also for the customer and our partners to make sure that everything's as it should be. And we have regular reporting as it should be. Back to threat intelligence. I think threat intelligence is very, very important. And we work with threat intelligence in multiple ways. We collect a lot of data from our sensor network, and that kind of benefits all our customers. But we do a lot of our threat intelligence comes from incident response, actually responding to incidents. We do more than 30,000 hours a year of incident response, and that teaches us a lot about the attackers. So that's real world experience with the attackers, and we translate that back into the content in our platform. So that is how we build our detection. And we also get a lot of information from technology partner and intelligence partners. We have more than 200 different partners that we collaborate with in terms of building intelligence. And we're also involved in a lot of different research projects that contribute to that. And the output from that is obviously the Argus Managed Defense Service, but we also have some threat intelligence feeds that can integrate with tools that you might already have in your organization. And we also write security advisories and white papers. Some of them are public, some of them are meant only for our customers, and we can also customize those advisories to specific customer needs. And we have a collaboration with government entities and other organizations in information sharing. That is basically the end of this presentation. This is just showing some of the research that we're doing. We do put aside quite a lot of resources into research, and as mentioned, that is where we get some of our intelligence, but it's also our way of making sure that we're part of what's happening next. We want to be in front of the industry, and we want to make sure that we have the best solutions going forward as well. So I think that's it for me. We have a few minutes for questions if there are any. And if you have questions that you don't think of now and don't want to ask now, and you want to take that later, if you want to meet with some of us, just please reach out. My email's on here. It's very simple, tommy@mnemonic.no. And Nate is available, and James and his people in Somerford is always also available. So just reach out to any of us, and we'll happily answer any questions.
Hey, Tommy, I think we've got a couple of questions come through. If I know we're limited on time, but if you're able to answer a couple of these, it'd be great. So one of the questions that came through was, can we use our existing tech stack with your services?
Yes, absolutely. There's multiple levels we can use that. So on the kind of the low side of that, we can take data from any solution that's able to push that data somewhere. And if you have an integration with something like Splunk, where you aggregate and collect all your data, even better. That makes that integration even easier. But we could usually integrate with any technology. That being said, we also have kind of preferred partners for some technology. We do evaluate technology all the time, and we bring new things into our portfolio. So the difference for the things that we actually have in our portfolio and we actively have in a relationship with is that we can usually do more. So we will know the product better, so we could have a more active role in managing and maybe also do two-way integration with some of those products. But yeah, we're happy to discuss specific products as well. But our goal is to make as little noise as possible going into any customer infrastructure, but we want to augment that or augment anything that's already there and see where there's gaps, and then we might add technology, but usually that's not necessary.
Brilliant. We've got another one here. Says, beyond the MDR capability that you've discussed today, can you also help with incident response and forensics?
Absolutely. I think I've just briefly mentioned it, that we have an incident response team. Didn't spend a lot of time on that. But yeah, so our service, the managed detection and response service, will give you a lot of the things that you need for handling day-to-day incidents, but anything that needs to be escalated and has more kind of or high severity or we can help with our incident response team. And we could do that all the way from kind of a full response where we have an incident handler, we have multiple specialists doing analysis, forensics, all that kind of stuff, or we could do more ad hoc help where you need help with analyzing one laptop, doing forensics, doing memory forensics, or looking into a Word document and look for malicious macros. So we have the entire kind of range of services within that.
That's brilliant. I've got one for myself, if that's okay.
Sure.
I think you touched on it earlier, but it's a really interesting point. With the growing threats and the increasing landscapes of focusing with cloud solutions, cloud services, cloud technologies. Yeah, how are you seeing that within the market today, and how are Mnemonic looking to address that? With the historic perimeter, as you rightly said, is starting to change. It's no longer the same, and some of the new threats are very sophisticated, especially with the introduction of Microsoft Teams, and where organizations have had to move rapidly to move to remote methods of working. What are you seeing?
Yeah, it's a complex question, but it's a good one. I'm going to try to keep it short. Yes, the changes are quite rapid, and I think one of the key aspects is getting the right data. So having control and making sure that you could actually get data from all the solutions, because the attacker doesn't necessarily care whether your presence is mostly in Azure. If you have two developer machines in AWS and that's his way in, he's going to use that, even though you don't really think of those as important. So making sure that you have control over everything, or at least everything important, and make sure that if there's interfaces from the things that you don't protect well, make sure that you at least control those interfaces. So I think that's kind of where you need to start. And our approach to that is making sure that we constantly develop our threat intelligence, and we constantly monitor the threat actors. So the way we work with a detection is looking at what are the most common threat actors and how do they attack organizations. And then when we work with a customer, we look at the data we have, we look at the detection mechanisms that we have built into Argus and the detection mechanisms that are available through the customer's architecture and any security devices they have there. And we look for gaps. So we look at we call them threat events, which is based on one or more threat actors, and we look at that event. So if this attacker were going to achieve this specific goal, these are the steps he would most likely take, and would that be successful or not successful in this infrastructure? And then we try to build on that, and we try to mature the service over time and mature the detection to be able to detect all those kind of threat events. And I think that is one of the better approaches, because making sure that you cover everything is very, very hard. So we need to have some sort of structured way of verifying that you're actually looking at the right things. This is probably something that is another webinar. I think we could spend an hour on actually going through threat events, security validation, and how to actually structurally work with increasing detection capabilities.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really interesting area, and sounds of it something that Mnemonic are already ahead of the game and really thinking about how to address some of those capabilities and some of the threats that are coming down the line. So, I agree. It'd be great to pick your brains again at another point. But today, just say a massive thank you from Somerford. Really appreciate you jumping on today and talking us through the mnemonic capability and going a bit more about who you are and who you stand for as a company. And I say again, I'm very excited about the partnership. It's been something that's been in building for over the last couple of years, and I'm glad that now is the right opportunity for both our organisations to be able to go and take this to market and help our customers and align. And I think that's brilliant. So thank you very much.